Nintendo owns CES. Intel slashes prices. And Amiga users get antsy. These stories and many more on this episode of the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine.
I've been waiting a long time for a chance to say this. Stop the presses.
Requiescat in pace.
Makes him crazy, man. What is a man?
It's me, Mario.
What a mess.
Get over here!
Please save me.
Welcome back to the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine, the show where we travel back in time 40, 30, and 20 years to find out what was making headlines in the video game and home computer industries of yesteryear. I'm your host, Carl, and today we're going to be traveling back 30 years to March of 1992. I'm your host, Carl, and as almost always now, back with my co-host, Mads. Welcome back, Mads.
Thanks a lot. And again, thanks for having me, Carl. It's always a pleasure.
Dude, the pleasure is all mine. So, before we can turn on the time machine, we have plenty to talk about today. Let's do the obligatory podcast banter. What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Have I got some news for you, mate? So for some old Amiga heads like us, this is brilliant news. I got my hands on the A500 Mini, the new mini computer.
Pray tell.
It's a brilliant piece of tech. I mean, I'm well chuffed with this. It's of course just a little emulation machine. It runs, I think there are 25 built-in games, some good ones there as well. But I've actually not even played a single one of the built-ins yet because it's so easy to add new games to it. So you just get your hands on some of those WHD load archives as LHA files, and you can drop them on a USB stick and plug it in, and off you go. You've got save states. You've got an emulator that it's been spot on for me so far. I haven't had any frame skips or input lag or graphical tokens or bad sound or anything on the games that I've been playing so far. And it's just a wonderful way of experiencing those old Amiga classics. And it's even complete with a tank mouse. It's got an optical, of course, but instead of a ball mouse, but it's a tank mouse. Nice. So I finally, after 30 years, finished Megalomania the other week. Played it on the Amiga Mini. Yes, finally, I remembered to save up some of your bases in Megalomania. You need to shut them down before you win. So you save up the people in that base for the final mission. And finally, I remembered to do that, and I actually won the final mission of Epoch 10. So, wow. Yeah.
Oh, dude, my hat is off to you. Now, a couple of quick technical questions. The famous or infamous Amiga black bars above and below the screen and so forth. How does the emulator deal with that?
So you've got three options. You can either choose to full screen it, which will stretch it and try to get rid of the bars, or there's a middle tier, which I forget what does right now, and then there's just give me the original old image with all of the bars and all of that. And actually, Megalomania, for example, I didn't full screen it. I just kept it at the original because that's how I'm used to playing my Amiga games anyway. I did play one or two of the built-in games just with the full screen option, and it works beautifully there as well. But there are some ways of tweaking the emulation. It's quite good that way. There are ways of reconfiguring the gamepad. They've got a recreation. You got the tank mouse, but also you get a very nice recreation of the CD32 controller and the dog bone controller that most people probably hate. But this is slightly smaller, so it's nice to hold in your hands. It's got a lot better D-pad because the D-pad on the CD32 controller was atrocious. Yeah. And it's just a really nice little gamepad to play the games with. And they've even remapped, for the built-in games, remapped some buttons so that you don't have to press up to jump on a gamepad. that would work, of course. Apart from that, I have a USB Competition Pro as well. You can just plug that in and that works as well. So, yeah, really good.
Cool. And for the games that you uploaded, how easy is mapping different keystrokes and stuff to the gamepad? Is that an option?
So I've heard that it's really, really easy because Matt from the Retro Asylum told me, but I haven't tried it myself because most of the games I really love on the Amiga are actually played with the mouse.
Ah, that's true. That is true. That's
So
true.
I've been playing with that tank mouse all the time instead.
Cool. And my last question, since you are a CD32 head, and we should put a link to your old CD32 YouTube series in the show notes. That I did the intro.
You did.
Just throwing that in. But so have you tried your CD32 image?
I have tried a few. I forget which ones right now. Yeah, I played just for fun, tried the cannon fodder, which I, of course, normally would play with a mouse as well. But yeah, I have tried a few, but you need to, you can't just launch disk images. You need to some WUHD load images. So they would normally be stripped. They wouldn't have the CD audio and stuff like that on there. So it's not for playing your original CD32 games as they were. But let's be honest, most CD32 games were actually just a few megabytes because they were lazy ports and nobody had been even bothered on creating. Well, there were almost no exclusives at all, and most developers hadn't even bothered creating new soundtracks or anything for it. So many of the CD32 games you can just find as WHD load images that would load on your A1200.
True. Yeah, the only thing that I would be thinking about there would be the unofficial CD32 and beer compilation disc. Yeah. That would be a fun one to install on there because it already has everything adapted for the gamepad, and it's got all the multiplayer games that you'd want to play. So I was just thinking that might be a good one to try out just to see how well the gamepad adapts to that.
So I don't think you can load stuff like that because that would be a CD image. So unless somebody made a huge WHD package from that, I'm not sure that would be possible.
I mean, 640 megs, it's not that much nowadays.
No, that's true.
Oh, but dude, that is really, really cool. So what did it set you back?
So it was in euros, something along 120 euros, I guess.
Yeah, that's not too shabby.
Yeah.
I mean, for a professional product?
Yeah, and that's really, really well done. So.
Have you plugged in a keyboard to it yet?
I have. That just works out of the box as well, yeah. So I'm hoping that they will actually make a version with a working keyboard at some point, like they did for the C64.
Yeah, but that would be a big dice.
Yes, it would be.
Yeah, but it would be pretty. It would be so pretty. Okay, I am envious. And the AGA, I'm guessing, works just fine as well, right?
Yes, everything you can throw at it that's Amiga related just works. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so another thing to put on my wish list. Oh, but dude, okay, yes, you have my envy. Congratulations. Damn, I cannot convince the wife to spend 120 euros on that, fortunately.
You'll get it for Christmas, mate. Just to be nice, and Santa will bring it.
Yeah. No, that's not going to happen. Okay, so that is awesome. Now, so banter is done. Now, remember everybody to click like or give us a 5-star rating or whatever else, or join us on Patreon. The links to all that stuff is in the show notes, or follow us on the social medias. We'd love to see you there. And if you do join the Patreon, you can see the video version of our next segment, the 7 Minutes in Heaven, where our esteemed co-host must play a game that was reviewed in a publication dated March 1992 that they have never played before for 7 minutes. And today's entry is, well, since we're Amiga fans, this was probably inevitable, a port of one of the Amiga's greatest hours, even though it started on the C64.
It did.
Turrican for the Game Boy. Mads, are you ready?
As ready as I will be.
Excellent. Then let the games begin. Welcome back, Mads, from your 7 minutes in heaven. So, for the uninitiated who have not had the joys of playing Turrican on the Game Boy, please explain to our audience what Turrican on the Game Boy is.
It's a hot turd. Was that enough, or do you need anything else?
Let's expand on that just a little bit.
So it's an action platformer, really, isn't it? Most people, if they don't know Turrican, they should know Turrican. They should play the C64 game Turrican and maybe the Amiga version as well. But you are the steel soldier, or whatever he is, the man of metal that is shooting all kinds of weird creatures, trying to get through these huge sprawling levels. And what's the goal, really? I forget. Of Turrican.
I believe the story is that some alien race has destroyed your ship. I know there was that whole anime still image thing story-wise in part 2, but I can't remember what the story of part 1 was. It's probably some garbage in the manual that Manfred Trenz, the original designer, had nothing to do with.
Yes. But Manfred did a wonderful C64 game, but this is not a wonderful game. They've on the C64 and the Amiga as well, you'd be playing this with a joystick. So of course you'd press up on the joystick to jump, because that's how we did it back in the day. That's something that the American listeners may find very, very weird, but that's how you jumped in platformers, because we only had one button, people, and we needed a button to shoot. So up is for jump on the old platformers in our world as computer gamers. And of course that works on the joystick to some extent. I still do prefer remapping it to a button these days. But these guys did a straight up port to the Game Boy. Now they had a D-pad and 2 buttons to work with. But for some reason, some really inexplicable reason, they decided, up is still for jump. And A is for jump as well. So you can jump either by pressing the A button or by pressing up. And that just means you jump by accident all the time, because you're using the D-pad to control your man. You're thinking that up is not jump. Up is probably aim upwards and shoot some of the enemies, because there's lots of enemies above you all the time. But no. If you try to shoot some of the enemies above you, you'll just jump into them and headbutt them instead. And that doesn't work really well, actually. So it becomes an uncontrollable mess because of that, if you ask me. Especially when played on real hardware, which I initially did. So playing it on the little D-pad on the Game Boy Color that I was playing it on, it just became nigh on impossible for me.
Yeah, I had the same experience trying to play it. It's a mess. It's sadly a mess.
Yeah.
It's
a game, wouldn't recommend anybody to pick this up, but do pick up the C64 version and be completely blown away by what you could do on a C64.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it was John did a 7 minutes a year or two ago, and I believe it was Turrican 1 on the C64.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was his first C64 experience, really. And he was duly impressed, as one should be, because it's awesome.
It is.
Yeah. But yes, so unfortunately, this was not the experience that you were hoping for.
So thank you for giving me such a turd of a game, Carl.
Hey, I gave you good stuff, okay? The list for this month included Metroid 2 on the Game Boy.
True.
All-time classic. You could have played Epic. Oh, granted, the first 7 minutes of that is terrible. You could have played Harlequin for the Amiga, another great one. Pinball Dreams, another classic. I was really kind of sad you didn't choose Town with No Name, because that is another turd-tastic one. But you could have chosen one of the greatest games of all time, the port of Cisco Heat to the Commodore 64.
Yeah.
Which, that's an all-time classic crap. But Desert Strike was on there, Toki for the Link, Contra 3 for the Super Nintendo, but you probably played all those before, right?
Yes. I mean, looking at the list here, we've got Another World, one of the best games ever. Goblins, which is one of my personal favorites that I actually finished very recently as well. And Parasol Stars, beautiful game. Yeah, lots and lots of good games here, but I've played most of them.
No, that's true. But have you played Empire of Steel?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It might still show up again next month, but if you haven't, it's a horizontal scroller in a steampunk scenario.
Oh, wait a second. It's the shmup, right?
Yeah.
I played that. Yeah, it's really good.
Mm.
I actually played that along with I think the very first episode I did for Retro Asylum was with Paul the Driscoll.
Yeah.
And we played Empire of Steel and some other Mega Drive shoot 'em ups.
Cool. Yeah. What we might still have to do, because Dyna Blaster got one review this month. That's the Amiga port of Bomberman.
Yeah.
It supports up to 5 players. And
I played that far too much. It's so good.
I believe there's going to be a port another review next month. We're going to see if we can get everybody on at the same time to play that live on an Amiga emulator.
Oh,
that might be fun.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. That all being said, you had a lot of fun with this. Ha ha ha.
Mm-hmm.
So, your final advice, should people play this or should people not play this?
Yes, on the C64.
Exactly. Okay, good. And one last stop before we turn on the time machine. And always remember, people, when we're talking about March of 1992, we're always talking about the cover dates of magazines and newspapers. So obviously all of the news and game releases happened at some point before that. It's just a framing device. Please don't send me hate mail. But because I do occasionally make some mistakes, we call on our good friend Ethan for a little segment we call the Department of Corrections.
Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from
the Department of Corrections.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. You may start the conversation now.
Welcome back, Ethan. So, let's look back at everything that happened when we talked about February of 1992.
Ring, 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 ring. It's the Department of Corrections. That's my imitation of your new sound effect.
Oh, the sound effect is good. Come on.
It has been deemed adequate by the Department of Corrections.
Excellent. I expect nothing more. It's good enough for government work. So,
exactly. Horseshoes and hand grenades. All right, let's talk first about the Mads comment. For that's all the comments that I have nowadays. For Peter is too busy at the moment, but yes. Mads making a good substitute. Though I didn't really have anything to say on this episode. So congrats on beating Jumpman Jr., I guess.
Yeah, dude, that game is tough as nails. So yes, it is an achievement.
All right, time to get the nails under the nails. Department of Corrections time. Number 1, you said that there was one co-founder of Acclaim from Activision. In fact, both co-founders of Acclaim are from Activision because Jim Skoropovsky worked at Activision, though he only did it for a year.
Ah, okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, he was working as a consultancy thing, trying to get that cartridge inventory out from under them. And according to Jim Levy, he saved Activision.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting. So he was the one who was able to move that inventory into the retail pipeline.
Some of it. They still had to deal with it for many years. But this was in the period immediately after the crash. Skoropovsky was the guy.
Very cool.
And speaking of the naming thing going up the chain, Mads mentioned that what if you were Aardvark? And there is indeed an Aardvark. But I think he said Aardvark Entertainment, but it's called Aardvark Software. I think it's an Australian company.
Yeah, I've heard of them too, and I'm trying to remember where. It must have been mid to early 80s, right?
They were definitely an 80s company. Might have been got bought by Melbourne House, but I might be going way outside my actual knowledge zone there. But Aardvark Software is the top of the phone book, yes.
Gotcha.
Next, Addams Family is not the best-selling pinball table. It is the best-selling flipper pinball table. Because back in the day, before pinballs had flippers, which if you didn't know, yes, pinball indeed did not have flippers. There are at least reports of selling several tens of thousands, whereas Addams Family sold like 14,000 or something like that. Obviously nothing to snuff at, but that period of time, at least by the reports of memories long past, the smaller, cheaper versions of the pinball table, fully mechanical, did indeed sell more than any flipper pinball table ever has.
Yeah, but also, I mean, obviously, a flipper pinball table is a much more complex machine and everything else. But you're completely correct. Old school pinball, especially in the craze years of the 30s and 40s, yeah, they were selling buco quantities of those things.
At least the 30s. By the 40s, it was kind of already out. But you will continue to track the unfortunate decline of the pinball in the post-war period. Well, the war period and then the post-war period.
Yeah. I mean, we do it tangentially on the side a little bit. It's a little off of our beat, but I hope everybody's enjoying those looks into the history of coin-op.
You should. And if you are further interested, you can go to the Memory Machine podcast, where I have done 2 episodes on the history of coin-op.
And we've linked them in the show notes before, and we will link them again today.
There you go. Wonderful. Next up, Galaxian 3, I think you said it had 14 seats or something like that. The big, theater-sized Galaxian thing, it had 28 seats individually.
Wow, okay.
Yes,
were
this
there
was an
different
experience.
Size models of it? Or was all the versions 28?
Yeah, the Galaxian 3 thing is very complicated. A lot of people have done some looking into this. And eventually Galaxian 3 becomes the basis for Star or something. I can't remember. Namco.
Yeah.
Yeah, Starblade, I think? Yeah.
Starblade, yeah.
So,
and there's also a release of Galaxian 3 for the PlayStation 1.
But it can never live up to the theater-like experience of what it was. So I'm not entirely sure if there were reduced models, but the maximum experience was 28.
Damn. Yeah, because the pictures I saw, it didn't look like it was going to be able to hold 28 seats. But I can imagine that they would have had multiple different size options for different venues. Would make sense.
I mean, if you're gonna go big, you better go big, you know?
Bingo.
And to the next point, you were talking about how on the SNES they were giving a special provision for things that got above a certain point total. And you said that there wasn't a point system on the NES, but there was indeed a point system on the NES. It didn't do that if you were over 30 points, you got the the extra game or anything. But I've been made privy to, well, actually I hand transcribed for the Video Game History Foundation a listing of a listing of games and their point totals from Nintendo.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that available anywhere online?
Not yet. They're working on some kind of article for it.
Okay.
But the average I think is around 20. It's give or take 2 points on either side. So that would be an average game and nobody ever got a 40. Even Nintendo's own games never got a 40. Which I think is, the technical top spot. So that they did have this point system, and they would use that to allot how many cartridges each third party would get to manufacture. So in that way, they were limiting the market, but they did not. But they were strict on the 5 games a year. They didn't have if you have 30 points, you get to release another game because it won't harm the market or anything, as on the SNES, as he reported.
Okay. Interesting. I knew they did evaluations for the seal of approval. I just didn't know that it was a point-based system. There's certain really horrible NES games I'd love to see the point values for now.
Oh, yeah. I'm not as versed in it, but I definitely looked at some of them, and I was like, well, that's an interesting score. And there's kind of 2 categories of it, too. There's what they call the big 3, and then I can't remember what the other thing is total, but it's 2 groups of 3 people who would get the final say in evaluation. And I know part of the big 3, I think it might have been Don James, Howard Phillips, and Minoru Arakawa were the big 3. And then I forget who the quote-unquote little 3 were.
Gotcha. Minoru Arakawa was part of it.
Yeah. So because he looked at all the games. He probably didn't play them all the way through or anything like Howard did, but he would have the say on whether or not they were going to manufacture them.
Very cool. Yeah,
and they would.
Sorry, I'm just speculating in my head or calculating in my head whether or not certain business relationships would have influenced those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. They say, and most of the people who have worked with Nintendo have said they were fair about it. And they did do, a quality-based evaluation, though what we would think of as quality today may not match what they presumed as quality back then.
Well, considering how many LJN games appeared on the NES and seemed to be plentiful on the secondary market, obviously their definition was different than what we may think today.
Yeah, but then we run into the numbers game. But let us put that aside. That is an interesting thing to delve into at some point. But for right now, I don't have all the information right in front of me. So.
Cool.
Last two things are on the Seattle Mariners. First of all, Kent does not have an entire chapter on the Mariners. Why do I know this? Because I read the entirety of Stephen Kent not too long ago.
Kent, I meant Game Over.
I don't think that's an entire chapter, but it is more. It has actual information, whereas Kent just quoted some newspaper.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's the Game Over book has a fairly... They go into it at length. I always had it in my back of my head as a chapter, but then again, it's been over 20 years since I've read that book. So.
Yeah. And on top of that, Nintendo no longer owns the Mariners. I believe they divested in 2016.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. Very cool.
Howard Lincoln is still the chairman or one of the chairmen of the Mariners, but he is no longer affiliated with Nintendo strictly.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
And I don't really know where the Mariners are at in baseball. I don't really follow it, so I can't tell you whether that's or not that's been good for the Mariners.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you either. The only thing I remember about the Mariners, despite the fact that I grew up in Seattle, is when I was a kid, they sucked. And then they had one good season and they managed to blackmail the city into giving them a brand new stadium. That's all I know. And that's when I decided the American sports franchise system is not worth following. College ball, I'll still do. Okay.
Okay, that is it for March or February of 1992.
Thank you very much, Ethan, for your service, and we will see you back here when we look back at February 2002.
Boy.
Get another mistake here then. Who does own the Mariners today, if it's not Nintendo?
That is an excellent question.
Oh, no cheating, no Googling. Come on.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I haven't lived in Seattle since 1995, so I am way, way out of this. Let's see. Some guy named George Argyros.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you have that one then.
Yeah, and I guess he's the current owner. I have no idea who this guy is. So yeah, unfortunately, it's not as cool as Nintendo.
I was actually in Seattle maybe only 12 years ago, just around this time, 11, 12 years ago. Yeah, so I should know, of course.
Yeah, well, I was back once, unfortunately, for my grandfather's funeral, but that's also that's at least 15. Oh my God, it's been a long time. Yeah, sad, but. I mean, Seattle is just, I still follow the news a little bit there. I get news reports, but it's kind of weird, the place you grew up, but then you have no contact with it anymore. And it's just kind of like, well, I know what it was like back in the day, but I can still tell you where to get the best fish and chips, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, I remember sitting in the Space Needle eating one evening, for example, and It's a nice place. I like Seattle.
Oh, I used to love it. I mean, granted, it's changed a lot since I was a kid in the 80s and 90s. I mean, back then it was more of a working class feel to the place, walking downtown with a bunch of little shops everywhere and stuff before the hipsters and the grunge people moved in. Yeah. It was just different. Nowadays it's, I guess it's all just bunch of people working in tech who make way too much money pushing up property values.
Yes.
But other than that. That being said, I think it's time for us to turn on the time machine and head back to March of 1992.
Sega CD. 1992. Joystick to a whole new world.
Welcome to March of 1992. Mads, what's our first story?
IRS clashes with operator.
Texas coin-op operator Wendell Cannon is taking on the IRS over their rules concerning coin-op video game depreciation. The tax agency insists that arcade games be depreciated on a 7-year schedule, while Cannon's records show a 55% income decline the first year, with a further 25% decline in year 2. He is also asking manufacturers to separate hardware and software on their invoices to help further clarify depreciation questions.
So he'd like to be able to depreciate it over 3 years, if I read those percentages right. Something along those lines?
Something along those lines.
Okay.
3, maybe even 2 years. I mean, given the massive drop-off of value.
But isn't that actually how we depreciate? I mean, that, at least in Denmark, how we depreciate IT equipment and have been doing that for 20 years?
Well, and this is the thing. Remember, this is a 30-year jump.
Sure.
So at this point in time, the tax office doesn't really understand that, apparently.
Of course.
And also remember, this is coin-op. So coin-op has an additional problem that you're going to be reusing that cabinet probably.
Yeah.
So how much of the purchase price of the game was the cabinet and how much was simply the board with the software? And how do you depreciate something like, and we've talked about this last couple months, Capcom is releasing, an upgrade to Street Fighter. Mm-hmm. What happens if you're not buying an entirely new board, but you're buying maybe just an upgraded ROM for a Model 16 board or a Model 32, System 32, sorry.
Yeah.
What do you do then?
Yeah, I guess we are also in the age of the JAMA cabinets these days in 1992. Yeah. So one cabinet, apart from wear and tear, it wouldn't really lose its value because you'd just be changing out the games all the time.
Exactly. And this is why what Canon is also asking for is that the manufacturers separate out and create 2 invoices. So even if you're buying a complete cabinet, and we talked about this last month, how Capcom is insisting that Super Street Fighter, that Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition is only going to be sold as a cabinet, not as an upgrade board. That, give out 1 invoice for the cabinet and 1 invoice for the board.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense for the operator, indeed.
It does, but it's also going to make it harder then for the manufacturers to sell you a whole new cabinet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, but speaking of Konami is keeping beat-em-up action alive.
While Capcom is raking it in with one-on-one fighting sensation Street Fighter 2 and the recently launched Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, which is sold only as a cabinet and not a kit, like I just mentioned, yes. Konami is continuing to expand its beat-em-up stable with new 6-player dual-screened X-Men arcade game, which it has just shown off at the UK ATI show, and announced that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Turtles in Time will now also be available as a kit instead of just a dedicated cabinet. Konami is also offering software add-ons to either convert the 4-player game to a 2-player if an operator doesn't have an available 4-player cabinet, or software to convert older TMNT boards into 2-player boards, allowing TMNT2 to take up the old TMNT1 cab and the old TMNT1 board to be migrated to a 2-player cab. Oh my God.
You really set up a trap for yourself there with all that
I really
TMNT.
did. I really did.
So I did say, speaking of Konami, that was Capcom you've been speaking about, of course. But, yes. So was the X-Men game actually 6-player? I've never seen that in the wild.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, we had one of these at the arcade that I used to work at in the 90s. Yes, 2 screens. So it actually spreads the image over 2 screens. So you have 2 screens worth of playfield.
So 2 screens back to back, and then you'll be standing all the way around those 2 screens, or?
Basically, you have the 2 screens next to one another.
Okay.
And you just have 6 controllers in front of it.
So, but I'm guessing the 2 screens would be showing the same image, right?
No.
Wow, so you have an image that spans the 2 screens?
You have a widescreen, yeah. You can run this in MAME. If you do the 6-player variant of X-Men in MAME, you will get the widescreen.
I need to try that at some point.
Oh, dude, is 6 players around that thing at the same time is magical chaos.
So the most I've ever played is 4 in a game of Gauntlet, for example.
Yeah. And no. X-Men 6-player is amazing. Now, granted, I don't know of any other games in the arcade that ever really pulled this off, but X-Men really worked wonderfully because each of the characters, I mean, granted, they're probably really statistically under the hood. There wasn't much difference between most of them, but still, each one of them felt different. The special abilities, screen filling, jumping around and stuff was unique to each character, and it really was a fun experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I need to experience that at some point.
Yeah, well, we'll put a link to what the cabinet looked like in the show notes, but you can take a look at it. So you'd have the screen, but it also receded it. So it was a very large cabinet. So you would have a piece of plexiglass between the player controllers and the 2 screens, and they were a little bit further back.
Okay.
In the cabinet. Probably just, to make sure that everybody, doesn't start touching the screens or something.
Yeah.
Or don't get anything between you always saw a separation because you are still CRT. So you could always see the line between the 2 screens, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Cool. So JVC launches the Wonder Mega.
Home electronics firm JVC has launched the Wonder Mega in Japan, a single unit that can play all Mega Drive and Mega CD games, as well as karaoke CDs.
Which, of course, you need in Japan.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that market is just huge. And it is an interesting little device. Obviously, we're going to see we've already talked about similar devices. We were talking last month or 2 months ago about the Combo Turbo Graphics unit, the Turbo Duo.
Yes.
And so this just makes sense. Now, obviously, it's not coming from Sega themselves. And this is something that in the next jump in the magazines, and one of the big things is that Nintendo has licensed out the GameCube to, I believe it's Panasonic, to do a DVD playing version of the GameCube. And so this is an interesting hybrid device using standard technology. Obviously, it's not really going to take off. I believe I saw Wonder Mega once or twice in the States, but I'm not sure if they were imports or it was officially released. Probably just import, though.
Yeah, probably. I think so. Okay. So SNES and Neo Geo heading to the UK.
As usual, the UK and the rest of Europe are getting their console fixes late. Nintendo will launch the Super NES in May, with the Neo Geo PAL variant having hit the market without any major fanfare.
Neo Geo, it was something we read about and everybody wanted, but nobody on this planet could pay for it. So I'm guessing that's why it hit the market without making a big splash.
Without making a big splash, but also simply the fact that this thing was so astronomically expensive that a big ad campaign probably wasn't going to pay off. Now, interestingly enough, in the US, most of the major game magazines are running big ads for the Neo Geo. There's, multi-page ads for it. Can't remember. I think it was Game Pro actually has like a little insert all about it. So they are pushing it in the States quite hard as a home console. But yeah, Europe, I mean, remember, this is 1992 in Europe. It's still the domain of the Atari ST and the Amiga, less so the ST at this point, but the Amiga is still a major factor. Consoles are getting stronger, but they aren't really the factor yet, and trying to sell the massively expensive Neo Geo is just hard. Very, very hard.
So you're probably right. I don't really recall seeing any adverts for it, but I did read reviews of the unit and the games because, I mean, they got so much praise. Everybody just wrote that this was just like having the arcade at home, but it also cost the same as having the arcade at home. So
That was kind of the problem, yeah. I mean, it was the arcade. It was the same hardware as in the arcades. And the Neo Geo hardware is so beautiful. I mean, just think about it. It's a system that does no backgrounds. Everything is sprites.
Yes, yeah. And I've had a Neo Geo board, mate. I love those games.
Oh, you owned a Neo Geo?
Yeah,
Dude,
I had a couple
you've got all the toys.
No more. But I had a couple of. I had a Japanese candy cabinet and a Sega New Astro City, and I had an old Danish cabinet that would be in all the chip shops here in Denmark back in the day. So back when I had those two arcade caps, I had, for example, a Neo Geo board and 15, 20 games. Great stuff.
Nice. My envy knows no limits. Okay.
Well, sadly, I don't have those anymore. But let's get to the next piece of news then. European devs bet on Sega at ECTS.
The European Computer Trade Show was held in London, and while few games premiered there as the big publishers kept their top product for US and Japanese shows, a clear trend was recognizable. European developers see their futures on consoles, and those consoles are made by Sega. Established teams like Probe and Team 17 are all working on Genesis games, with publishers like US Golden Version busy as well on titles for Sega's 16-bit system, as well as the 8-bit Little Brothers Game Gear and Master System.
Yeah, so I remember that all of the Amiga developers, when they ported anything to any consoles, it would be the Mega Drive or the Genesis. And I always assumed there was two things that made that transition possible. One was that the Sega brand was better known in the UK, where a lot of these developers were from, because everybody knows, I guess, that Master System was dominating, as far as I know, was larger than the NES, and in the beginning the Mega Drive was larger than the Super Nintendo as well in the UK. But another issue probably is that it's the same CPU as the Amiga that they loved to program for. So I'm guessing that would make some of the stuff easier to port for them.
Oh, tremendously. I mean, the fact that it was all 68,000 code just meant that you didn't really have to reprogram the basic game logic. Everything was already there. And then you just had to make sure that you were sending it through the graphic hardware properly. Yeah. So we probably never would have gotten Amiga ports of Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 had it not been for the fact that they already had to program the Genesis versions.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, and so, the 68,000 chip in the Genesis is the one that gives them that in. They don't have to, really work with the Super Nintendo. And like you said, Sega has the lead. It's out much earlier. The Master System is also much, much bigger. So it just makes sense for them if they're going to bring over already known properties.
Yeah.
To a console, they're going to do it on the systems that are present in their home markets.
Yeah, that definitely also for somebody like me who was a PC gamer like yourself, never had a console before the PlayStation. That was my first console actually. But if I had to choose a console back in those days, I would have gone with the Mega Drive, because that was where all of my Amiga games got ported to. That was where I saw those developers moving. And it was the best platform for playing the arcade ports.
For a lot of the arcade ports. But remember, by the time you're talking 92, the arcades are not producing as many hits anymore. And so, if you're looking at the big hits of 92, Final Fight is already like 2 years old at this point. Street Fighter 2 is going to launch on the Super Nintendo. So the Genesis has the Sega arcade hits, but even the big Sega arcade hits, you're thinking of the past. You're thinking of Space Harrier. You're thinking Afterburner, Outrun,
Golden Axe.
Yeah, true. But these are already games that are pretty long in the tooth.
Yeah, the late 80s games, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And some of those ports are, Outrun on the Genesis.
Don't say a bad word about Golden Axe.
No. Golden Axe on the Genesis is an amazing port. But, are you going to be dropping serious cash for that experience? I mean,
so I wasn't.
cartridges
I had my Amiga, so
there you go, exactly. But yeah, no, it's. I agree with you. The Genesis is doing some amazing games at this point. And it's going to take the Super NES a while to build up a catalog that can really compete. But, ultimately they will. But yeah, the Genesis, you're right. If I was going to buy a console at this point, the Genesis would be that console. But the reality is I'm going to still stick with a computer at this point if I have the choice.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's Amiga. Amiga's awesome. Maybe. Well, we'll see.
Speaking of Sega's competitor, console side of the CES belonged to Nintendo.
With the Super NES aiming straight for Sega's jugular, the house that Mario built pulled out all the stops, including promoting a lot of third parties that have been polishing their second round of games, including Contra 3 and Street Fighter 2. Nintendo has also made sure that their CD-ROM add-on got as much ink in the press as possible. They quietly distributed a press release giving the core specs of the CD drive, which either match or surpass those of the Mega CD, but the big feature, the coprocessor, is mentioned without giving any details. Nintendo gave a January 1993 launch date for it.
Yeah, the CD-ROM add-on that never was and turned into the PlayStation later on, I guess. The project, at least.
Well, see, at this point, we're already past that. Remember, they've already betrayed Sony.
Have they?
And already signed the deal with Philips. Yeah, they've done that like 6-7 months ago. We talked about it on the show. So at this point, at this CES, Consumer Electronics Show, they're now talking about what would be the Philips CD-ROM drive.
Okay.
And this Philips CD-ROM drive was supposed to have a coprocessor. Now, the problem with it is, remember, the Mega CD has the coprocessor that allows for a lot of the Mode 7 style effects that could be used in a ton of Sega CD games. Well, not a ton, but the significant one. And the problem is that Nintendo needs to make it sound like their CD-ROM drive will also do this. And this is where my personal gut feeling, and I may be completely wrong on this, Ethan will let me know, is they have no coprocessor in the work. But they desperately need to take the wind out of Sega's sails, especially after the launch of Sonic. So they are claiming that there will be a coprocessor, but it's kind of weird that there's no details about the coprocessor in this flyer that they've distributed.
Yeah, you'd think they at least have some specs.
Yeah, no. They're just mentioning that there's a coprocessor, but they're not actually talking details, probably because they've already started to figure out that this thing is not going in.
It's probably because it didn't do blast processing.
Exactly. That, and I mean, the Mega CD is not setting the world on fire. And I'm guessing that they've probably started to figure out they need to just keep the flames alive about, this thing is coming, so don't bother buying the Mega CD. But at the same time, hey, here's Contra 3 and Street Fighter 2. You want that. And that'll be just enough to, keep everybody looking at Nintendo.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Good strategy. It seems to have worked. So.
Well, and it didn't end there. The Smoke and Mirror show. So in other Nintendo news, rumors are circulating about a color Game Boy that would be backward compatible and have the same resolution as the current device, but launch at just $99. And
so did it actually launch at just $99 when it finally launched?
Well, this is the thing. The actual Game Boy Color doesn't start development until 1996. These rumors are they might just be completely made up, but it's more likely than not that it's another one. Just like with the CD-ROM drive, it's Nintendo spreading these rumors because the Game Gear is out. And they're trying to take the wind out of the sails of the game. Yeah.
They should have just talked about the battery life instead. We'll be all done.
Well, and that's really what killed it. I mean, the Game Gear ultimately. Yeah. But it's kind of weird because I got this from several different magazines. We're all talking about this rumor of a color Game Boy.
Okay.
And so I find it hard to believe that it's just, something somebody made up. It really does sound like they were probably, well, this sounds like a reasonable thing, We can't start an entirely new platform. We don't want to scare anybody away. We mentioned that it's backward compatible. You can still use your games. So keep buying games. They'll still be playable. But, and, it just never really came out.
So ready to switch from the Nintendo side to the PC side of CES?
Yes.
So PC side of CES cluttered with delayed titles, 3D worlds, and new tech.
The winter CES was a bit disappointing for PC journalists, as many of the top titles on display had already been announced for Christmas of 1991. As we talked about last year, a ton of games got delayed as the rapid adoption of VGA graphics and sound cards by consumers caught many publishers by surprise, and they had to quickly retool many titles to make them market competitive with the likes of Lynx and Wing Commander 2. Games that slipped included Strike Commander, Ultima 7, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, Populous 2, Darklands, Star Trek 25th Anniversary, and Magic Candle 2.
Yeah. Big titles there.
Oh, a ton of big titles. And this is really one of those situations where some of it is probably just these games were very, very ambitious.
Yeah.
But also probably a lot of publishers just kind of got anxious and worried that maybe the titles were not spectacular enough. Maybe even in the sound department, because most of these were always going to be 256 color VGA games. But I think it may have also been down to the sound not being up to it. Yeah.
I'm just thinking 92. I mean, Monkey Island, and it was released in 1990.
Yeah.
And
Monkey Island 2 is in 92. Those reviews are also coming out
that's
right
probably
now.
in 92, yes.
Yeah.
Just thinking about when that they started the Monkey Island development in EGA, doing EGA graphics.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they switched to VGA already at the end of that development, or was that actually a later release?
That was a later release. The original PC release is EGA, then the Amiga version comes out that ups it to 32 colors.
Yeah.
This is why the close-ups of the characters when you talk to them look very similar to the VGA versions on the Amiga.
Yeah.
And the VGA version comes out a little bit later. So I remember the original, I played it on my friend's PC. He had a VGA PC, but what you got essentially was an EGA game. And then we played it again on my Amiga. We were like, ooh, that looks much prettier. And then the VGA version came out. It was like, okay, yeah, you got the better looking version now.
Yeah. So I see, just getting off on a tangent here, I see Lucasfilm Games actually had a trade-in. If you had bought the EGA version of The Secret of Monkey Island, you could send in your discs and then for a very cheap price upgrade it. I think, it's $10. For $10 you could upgrade to the VGA version.
Yeah. And I mean, they kind of had to do it, but we see there, it's really that moment where they're like, oh, EGA will be good enough. And then suddenly it was like, oh, there's Lynx and Wing Commander. No, we can't do this.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And in other news coming out of CES, Questbusters, the newsletter for RPG fans, also mentions the move to VGA, as apparently industry insiders told the editor that it's becoming almost impossible to get retailers to carry anything that runs on EGA. Yeah. Now, there were some new titles at the CES. But we have Bethesda's Terminator 2029, Star Control 2, Humans, The Lost Files of Sherlock Holmes, and Electronic Arts' early in development Car and Driver magazine licensed driving game. That's going to become Need for Speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't love Humans back in the day.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I played that on the Amiga. It must have been released on the Amiga as well, right?
I had the boxed version. The European release was really cool because you opened it up. There were two smaller cardboard boxes in it that looked like stones. And you opened the one up, it had the discs in it, and the second one had the manual and a little comic book. It was actually really cool. The artwork on it was terrible, but it was really cool. But yeah, no, Humans was awesome. Would get a lot of sequels. Lost Files of Sherlock Holmes was the point-and-click adventure game that EA did. This was around the time when everybody was creating their own point-and-click adventure engines.
Yep.
And give it another year, and then everybody's going to drop that because of Wolfenstein.
Yes.
But yeah. And Terminator 2029 is the second Bethesda Terminator license game, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. They're going to do many, many more with the Terminator license.
Yeah.
So.
But the 3D, the switch to 3D was there already in 92. That actually surprises me a bit. I thought that was a couple years later.
And this is the thing. Remember, this is the CES. So this is the early CES. So it's where everybody's doing the deals. And so you got Strike Commander, which we already mentioned. We have Aces of the Pacific, which is the Dynamics game. Michael Jordan In Flight, which was a 3D basketball game.
Yeah.
Which if you never played it before, it's an unplayable mess. But it's really, really cool to see because it's using scanned digitized images of the players.
Okay.
Moving around a 3D field. Ultima Underworld is already, we've talked about that. That's been in ads all over the place, and that was being shown off. So Computer Gaming World is also reporting they've seen 2 more games behind closed doors that utilize a first-person point of view. One of these, I'm quite sure, is Wolfenstein.
Okay.
The other one, if I had to guess, is Legends of Valor, which also got ported to the Amiga. That was also a first-person RPG, which is going to come out relatively shortly after this.
Yeah.
So this idea of the first-person 3D world it's in the air. Ultima Underworld is obviously going to be the first one to get to market. Obviously, if you're old-school computer gamer, you remember the Freescape engine games from way back in the day, but those were untextured polygon worlds that moved at a snail's pace.
Yes.
But this idea of being off the grid is coming, and anybody who's not off the grid is pretty much going to be left behind in short order. Now, the other big innovation is CD-ROM. I mean, we've seen it already. We were just talking about with the Mega CD and Super NES, but on PC, it's adding new depth to games with Seventh Guest. At this time point, simply known as Guest. They haven't added the 7th in front of it yet, probably because it would be hard to copyright Guest. And that is merging pre-rendered backdrops with FMV actors. And then there was an interesting game, and I don't think I've mentioned this on the show yet. I've now been added to a list as one of the contributors to games that weren't, because I've been sending them stuff for quite a while now. Every time I run across a game in this time period that would qualify. Frank Gasking, who runs that over there, we've become good buddies and constantly talking about this stuff. So Palace Software of Barbarian fame, they've got a game in development called Jekyll and Hyde, which will intersperse video clips during play as with 4 teams. So it's actually being designed as a networked multiplayer game using FMV. And the idea is each of the 4 teams has different goals in relationship to the Jekyll and Hyde murders. So you're either trying to save Hyde or kill him or something else. And they've got all these actors, TV actors and stuff. They're also planning it to be cross-platform so that both Amiga players and PC players can play against each other. And this is also a concept at this moment that is kind of a flash in the pan, but it's interesting because Maxis also has a game called RoboSports, which is a reinvention of the game that you played a few months ago for the 7 Minutes in Heaven, Robot Wars. But it's turning it. RoboSports has you doing essentially the same thing, the basic programming of the droids and stuff, but you have whole teams of robots, and it's multiplayer over a network.
I think I can see why this game Never was. That does sound very ambitious.
The Jekyll and Hyde one, yes. And I'll put a link to this in the show notes. There's a couple of good articles about it with pictures of, the shooting that they were doing for it. It is interesting because Palace started off as a video distribution company or a video store. I can't remember. It was first a video store, and then they got into video distribution, and then got into games. So they have that movie DNA in the company. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is basically it's going to break them. There's no way for them to pull this off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but RoboSports did come out. Great game if you haven't played it.
Never tried that.
It's really, really good. Yeah, a buddy of mine had it on the Amiga. We played it over a null modem a couple of times. Oh, yeah. So much fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to give it like 3 hours to really come to grips with the structures of the game and the strategies. Once you do that, it's so good. Okay. But yeah. Okay, sorry.
So Intel slashes prices.
As the price war with AMD heats up, Intel has decided to slash the prices of their 386 desktop chips by up to 35%. They will focus on generating revenue from their 486 and 386 SL laptop chips going forward. In related news, AMD has announced that they will be introducing their own line of 486 chips this year.
Yeah, well, natural move, I guess.
Yeah. And it's also
the next generation.
Yeah, plus it's also a sign that the idea of naming your chips just a number is not sustainable because anybody can copy it.
Yes. So I didn't. My first 486SX was not an Intel chip. I forget which manufacturer it was, but it could have been an AMD, I guess.
It was probably an AMD. There were a few that were making them late.
Did Cyrix actually do 486s as well?
That is a good question. Probably, but I can't remember. Yeah. This is why Intel is going to introduce the concept of the Pentium.
Yes.
Because, just having these people copy them all the time, and the fact that they're abandoning the low end. And in 1992, a 386 was still an aspirational machine for most people.
Yeah.
But, hey, the market conditions are what they are, and Intel has the lockdown on the high end market, so they might as well go for it.
Yeah, I was still using my A500 at that point. So.
I would be using it until 1996, so yes, I stayed on a long time.
Yeah, far too long, mate, far too long. But speaking of Commodore drops the CD-TV price.
Commodore has slashed the price of their CD-based set-top box from $999 to just $799. The new lower price also comes with a software bundle including Grolier, Electronic Encyclopedia, and Lemmings.
And still, it wouldn't sell.
No way in hell, especially in the US.
It was far too expensive for what it was. It was an A500 in an icebox with an IR remote and a CD, single speed. So if I do recall correctly, yes. CD drive, right?
Yeah.
And even with caddies. So yeah.
Oh wow, it had a caddy. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it does. It does. I have my CD TV right here actually. It's caddy based, and it's extremely fickle. If you look at it wrong, it breaks the CD drive.
I'll believe it.
Yeah. Not a very good product. It was a product I really wanted it because it was just so sexy in that sleek black box. You could place under the TV. But then again, if you did place it under the TV, you'd have to control it. There was no way you'd have a keyboard. There is a keyboard, a mouse for it as well, and a very nice disk drive as well, external disk drive you could plug in. But who would do that if it was supposed to stand in the living room under the TV? And yeah. The stuff that was made for it just wasn't very controllable with that controller. That IR controller. What did work well was the encyclopedias. They were actually quite good, and I think they thought that was what was going to sell it. Getting stuff like that into the living room.
Yeah,
because multimedia was all the rave at that point in time.
Yeah, everybody thought that was going to sell. The problem is, after 5 minutes, you're like, why am I looking crap up on my television set?
Yes, exactly. And if you wanted to actually use it as an A500, which you could, of course, well, it wouldn't work in the living room. You'd have to have it in your office, and you might as well just use your only old A500 because the stuff that was on CD wasn't really worth much.
Exactly. It was an idea that made no real sense because there was no application for it.
No, that's true.
Too bad, really. I mean, they could have done something with it had it been able to play movies.
Yes.
If it had a movie-capable format, then yes. But, without an FMV capable processor, forget about it.
Yeah, true.
Oh, well.
So let's leave the CDTV behind and go to more Amiga news. Amiga anxiety grows.
German magazine Amiga Joker's editorial this month bemoans the many voices whispering of the death of Commodore's 16-bit system. The rise of the PC, it says, is not the end, as the Amiga still has a strong fan base and consoles can't deliver what the Amiga can. Elsewhere in the magazine, there is an ad for the publisher's new magazine, PC Joker, that covers DOS gaming with the tagline, "Soon on the Amiga, but available now at a newsstand."
Nice.
Yeah.
So I actually never knew that they moved on to PC Joker as well. I used to buy Amiga Joker because I did read German back in the day. I still do, of course. So I actually used to buy Amiga Joker back in the day.
Yeah, and Amiga Joker would go on to be the world's best-selling Amiga games magazine for quite a while because it did last for quite a while, even after the platform was truly dead. But, PC Joker was relatively short-lived because it was just a way too crowded market. And the way that the magazine was set up was very similar to the way that Amiga Joker was set up, and it just didn't quite read well. Okay. Amiga Joker was just a hard thing to read back in the day.
Okay.
PC Joker didn't improve on that, and other magazines were just doing it much, much better. So, sadly.
Yes.
But the fact that their tagline was "Soon on the Amiga," which was a typical tagline on ads back then of, buy this new game for DOS. And then they'd put at the bottom, "Soon on the Amiga or the Atari ST." So, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, but in other news, Sierra signs rep deal.
Sierra Online, famous for their point-and-click adventures, has signed a deal with International Computer Group, a licensing and deal rep company out of Canada, to try to license its properties for consoles.
So would they have to port them themselves, or no? They're licensing them out to other developers for...
Exactly.
Okay, like that.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting because Ken Williams had mentioned something about this in my interview with him. And because I asked him about why Sierra wasn't on consoles more and stuff. And he had mentioned something about a rep, and then I ran across this. I was like, okay. And there had been a few ports of Sierra games to consoles. Probably most notably, there was King's Quest 1 on the Sega Master System, King's Quest 5 on the NES, and I believe Willie Beamish made it to the Mega CD.
Okay.
And I'd have to check to see, who actually did those ports, but I believe it was Dynamics actually did those ports. So as far as I know, nothing major comes out of this deal.
But speaking of Dynamics,
yes,
Jeff Tunnell steps down as president of Dynamics.
Looking to get back to projects that don't require massive teams like Heart of China and Willie Beamish did, Tunnell is going to lead a new team inside of the company and hand the managerial reins to Tony Rennicke.
So he stayed at Dynamics. But, stepped down as the president. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't want to do the management anymore. He wanted to get back to more, innovative game ideas and spend time with that as opposed to the ever ballooning theatrical and presentation-based games that they had been sliding towards since really Die Hard was the first one that really got them going in that direction. And this is going to lead to games like The Incredible Machine, which is
probably amazing. The game that you know the name Jeff Tunnell from. For me,
nowadays, yes.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's all of the story-based games.
Yeah.
For me, he's the guy from Heart of China, Willy Beamish, Rise of the Dragon. Those are the games that I always think of with him. Obviously, Project Firestart. Yes. But yeah, Incredible Machine is the one that is just amazing. But again, it's a game that didn't require a huge team to work on. You just got it going. You didn't now need actors and directors and animation people and stuff. You just kind of made a bunch of little sprites and built intricate puzzles out of it.
And that game, along with The Lost Vikings, probably Doom later on, is one of the major reasons that I skipped a lot of classes in high school. We had those games on the PCs at the high school. So.
Oh, you lucky dogs! The only thing we had in the PCs, we had XTs, and it was slow. Now, granted, my programming projects, I would have to work on them at home on my Amiga 500 using a DOS emulator that was running at half the speed of an XT.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was so painful. Oh, well.
So, Doug Glenn leaves LucasArts for Sega.
Lucasfilm Games managing director Doug Glenn has left the company after 6 years to become Sega VP in charge of their CD-ROM activities. Will he be able to replicate the magic that gave us Monkey Island and Loom on the Sega CD?
Well, there is Monkey Island on the Sega CD.
That is true, and this is probably because of him. But he's not really able to bring the same touch to it, unfortunately.
Okay.
And the Sega CD is, I mean, have you ever tried playing Monkey Island on the Sega CD?
I have. It's not a great experience. It looks fine. Sounds good as well, but the loading times, if I recall correctly, are not that good. And the controls, of course, takes some getting used to. Yeah, and this is the problem. The Sega CD, like the CD TV, the CD technology wasn't there yet from a speed standpoint. And great, you've got all this data, but if you can't get it onto the screen fast enough, it's just going to feel awkward. Yeah. It's all about getting it on the screen. But something that does look brilliant on the screen is Another World. And Another World, which I could have played actually, but I didn't. Yeah. Gets reviewed. Well, you couldn't have played it because that'd be a game you hadn't played before. That's true. I finished that a lot of times. There you go. Well, Lester Chaiken, and I'm probably killing it, Chaiken or something like that. It's French. Cinematic platformer Another World is getting reviewed in most of the big European mags this month or last month. So can I just stop you right there? Yes. That's Eric Chahi who did Another World. Chahi. Thank you. Eric Chahi. Yeah. I couldn't remember how to pronounce the name. No. You said Lester Chaiken. He's called Eric Chahi. Eric Chahi. What? How did my spell check played tricks on? Oh well, Eric Chahi. Thank you. Yes. While most give the game high ratings in the 80s, German magazine Power Play has not seen the game's brilliance. Tester Michael Hengst bestowed the game a mere 48%, wondering what took 2 years, and compares the gameplay unfavorably with that of Space Ace. Did that guy actually play the game? I mean, you can't compare that to Space Ace. Space Ace is a, what do you call these today? QuickTime event game, nothing else. There's no free control or anything like this. Another World is an actual game. Well, think about Another World. And my first reaction was yours. And then I started thinking about my actual experience playing Another World back in the day. You have to memorize every single thing, and you make even one step. If you move the character even a pixel too far, you will die. And you will die again and again and again. Like those little slugs in the second screen. Yeah. Killed me countless times. And there's no real way of knowing that they're going to kill you the first time. You're just going to die. And everything is going to kill you the first time you encounter it.
and you basically have to memorize the exact right path of steps to get to the next screen.
It's true to some extent. Not completely, because there is definitely, you need to learn this game. You need to learn to anticipate what's coming at you. But there's also some reflexes, some muscle memory, and some skill involved in the gunfights, for example, and a lot of platforming later on. But you're right, in the very beginning, it's mostly memorization. I mean, step 2, you start by if you don't move, you get grabbed by those tentacles immediately and get killed. So you need to start by moving up, of course. Then you need to move right on the screen, and then you have those slugs. You need to kick, of course, and then but again, the slugs, they don't fall in the same place every single time. That's a bit randomized. So it's not like Space Ace where it's just the same screen. Then you get to that huge black lion kind of creature, and yes, you need to run away from that and jump and so on. But as soon as you get, I would actually say, right after that line, after you escape that line, you get captured and you end up in a cage. As soon as you break free of that cage, the similarities stop there, because now you're into some of the more skill-based gaming, because now you've got gunfights and stuff like that.
Well, you have the gunfights, but then, for example, there's the whole water underground with the tunnels flooding and stuff. Yes. Which again is a pure memorization and timing question. Which again, the Space Ace comparison in full force there.
But it's not. There's some memorization and some timing, but also some reflexes and some pulling off some platforming, right?
Well, Space Ace is also reflexes. You got to push the button at the right moment. That's what a quick time event is. It's not like you're foreseeing, enemies coming at you and stuff. It's just, at this moment I have to do this action, otherwise I die. And it's not like, you lose energy. Everything is a one-hit kill.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll say what I've said a lot of times to Chris when recording an episode of the Retro Asylum. I could agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong.
I know. But this is one of those great reviews where Michael Hanksy still shows up on podcasts and stuff today. He's still in the industry in different capacities. Yeah. And there's a German podcast that I love listening to called Die Spieleveteranen, the game veterans. And it's mainly old game journalists. Some of them still are game journalists. Some of them have moved on to doing PR work or other things in the industry. And they talk about either, what they're looking at today, what new games are coming out, but they also do these retrospectives going through the old magazines and stuff. And this is the kind of thing where I'm just like, okay, these are these little historical ones. It's going to be interesting once we get to the reviews in the 40-year jump of Sid Meier's Pirates. There's some amazing reviews of Sid Meier's Pirates because people just did not get the game. They're like, what's the goal here? What am I doing? Why is my ship suddenly slower? Well, because you took on a bigger ship and now it's part of the colony. And they did not get it. I believe it's the Zap 64 review is just like, this is utter garbage. What the?
Really?
No. Yeah,
you can't badmouth Pirates. That's just not okay.
But that's the thing. At that moment in time, the fascination with the game, with the storytelling element, your internal story for your character just went over the reviewer's head.
Oh, man.
And so this is why I like going back. I mean, we don't talk about actual game reviews very often here on the show, but when one of these happens, it's just like, okay, I got to go with it because it's just too brilliant. So yeah.
Yep. So one of the best games ever made, probably, if you ask me, and a lot of other reviewers. Another World is definitely one that people need to try today if they haven't. It's called Out of This World.
Yes,
and it was made by one man. It's the main platform was the Amiga, and that is the best version, if you ask me. But the DOS version is quite good as well, made by Eric Chahi.
Yes, and I am a person who knows how to appreciate the amazing artwork and the atmosphere of the game, and I find it absolutely horrendous to play.
Really?
Yes.
I've played all the way through that so many times.
I'm one of those people who I hate having to memorize stuff in a level.
Okay.
I just hate it with a passion. It's like, no. it has to be intuitive. I need to understand what's going on. And, okay, my reflexes are either going to be there or not be there. But if I have to memorize what's going to happen, I get annoyed so quickly.
For an old game, though, it's quite lenient with you because, I mean, this game could have just had 3 lives, and when you're dead, you start from the beginning again. It doesn't. You can fail as many times as you want. And apart from that section you just mentioned where you have to get away from the rising water in the caves, that's quite a long section you have to get through in one go before you get a new save point. But apart from that, save points are actually not that far between. So it's actually in no way
out of the
a hard game to finish.
I never got out of the cave.
Okay. Well, that is the worst part. That's
I tried.
If I recall correctly, that is the furthest between 2 save points. That's in those caves. But once you get through that, it's not that bad.
I know, but it took me forever to get to the caves. And then once I died again and again and again, I was like, you know what? Screw this game. Screw it.
You need to complete this, and then you'll love it so much that you'll go on to the Sega CD sequel that was called Heart of the Alien.
Yeah, I think I booted up Space Ace after that and used the cheat code to just watch it all the way through, and I was very happy.
Okay. So let's go on to the last piece of news, which makes me really, really sad. Michi passes away.
I know. Of the many names inscribed in the legendary Amiga 1000 case molding, none is more legendary than Michi, J. Miner's dog. Michi has passed after a long and happy life.
Yeah. So would you believe the Amiga 1000 is one of the few Amigas I don't actually own?
I would believe that, and I've seen them. I've never owned one, but I would love to have that casing.
Yes, exactly. Just that piece of Amiga history.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, and for those who don't know, the original Amiga, which wasn't called the Amiga 1000 when it came out, it was just called the Amiga. Basically was like a PC box that you would put the monitor on top of, and on the inside of the molding of the case, they molded in the signatures of all the developers. And Jay Miner, who was responsible for the video chips, he's basically the main guy behind it. He loved this little dog, and so there's a paw print inside for Michi.
So this little dog that he brought with him to work every day, so he was part of the office.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where you'll probably never get another machine with such a tight-knit group of people working on it and with a spirit behind it that was as unique as the Amiga's development history and team was.
No, true. They've got some fascinating stories to tell.
Oh, yeah. So Michi has passed. And
so I know somebody who would be happy with this because he likes the passing away of things at the end of episodes, but I'm not Peter, so
yeah, that's only for companies. People and dogs are another story. But yes, I didn't have any companies going broke this time, so that's not the end today for us. Okay.
But we'll have to make do.
Yes. So your last task as co-host. What is the word of the day?
So can I choose a name?
Yes.
So just I think it's gotta have to be Lester Chaikin. That'll be the word for today.
I have no idea why my notes say Lester Chaikin. I have no idea. Okay. We'll go with that. Okay, everybody. Remember, if you like the show, subscribe, all that good rot. And Mads, where can everybody find you?
On some other podcasts around the net. They probably know by now. So.
Exactly. And if you don't know, the links are in the show notes below.
Yes.
And also remember, everything that we talked about, there's links to all the sources and all the stuff that we probably tangentially touched upon. So go in there, deep dive, read up on the stuff. It's always fun. And I guess that is it for this week. Everybody, have fun.
Bye.